Most individuals exist within a matrix of commercial administrative procedures, operating as wards of the state, without ever realizing they possess a prepaid estate. This condition is not accidental. It is the result of an intestate position. Because most families are uninformed and lack a private will or trust, they are forced into probate, the very basis of the American court system, where the state assumes guardianship over your assets. In the public sector, the population is conditioned to work for debt, utilizing Federal Reserve notes which are merely negotiable instruments, promises to pay a debt that can never be settled because lawful money, gold and silver, was removed from circulation. Meanwhile, in the private sector, the elite utilize your credit to fund the system. The Treasury Direct Account, TVA, is your hidden legacy account, a repository of bonds and securities generated by your labor and existence. To bridge this gap, you must move from the status of a debtor to that of a secured party creditor, reclaiming your credits and severing the agency relationship with the federal corporation. Public versus private sectors. Strategic wealth preservation and jurisdictional autonomy calls for a complete understanding of the dual sector economy. The public sector is the jurisdiction of the government-controlled economy, a realm defined by statutes, debt, and administrative oversight where individuals operate as U.S. citizens. In contrast, the private sector is the individual-controlled economy governed by contract law and private autonomy. The transition from a U.S. citizen to an American national is the foundational administrative move required to exit the public regulatory matrix. The legal crux of this transition involves the all-capitalized corporate persona, or the strawman. Under 28 U.S.C. 3002-15a, the United States is defined as a federal corporation, and under 15 U.S.C. 4724e1, a United States business is explicitly defined as a United States citizen. Consequently, the all-caps name functions as a sole proprietorship within that public corporation. Following the bankruptcy established by House Joint Resolution, HJR 192, individuals in the public sector are relegated to the status of debtors, forced to utilize Federal Reserve notes, which are debt instruments, to discharge liabilities without ever obtaining true title. A private national corrects this by assuming the status of a creditor. By operating through private contracts, the creditor possesses the standing to access the prepaid credit associated with the corporate persona, transforming liabilities into liquid assets held within the private estate. The legal system operates through a form of spellcasting, found in the spelling of your name. Your government IDs and utility bills use all capital letters to identify a persona or federal corporation. This corporate identity was established at your birth. When your mother signed the birth certificate as an informant, the state viewed this as an act of abandonment, allowing the government to step in as the guardian of the estate. You have likely spent your life acting as a trustee for this dead entity, making you liable for its debts. Autonomy requires you to step up as the executive of the estate, moving the name from a sole proprietorship into a private trust. This shift in standing changes the relationship with the state from a subordinate ward to a private contractor. Once this conceptual foundation is established, the strategist must move into the administrative execution of status correction. Phase 1. Political status correction and identity reclamation. Before you can settle public accounts, a political status correction is mandatory. You must transition from a U.S. citizen, a debt-based ward position, to an American national or foreign national. This process is the formal act of reclaiming your reversionary interest and revoking the implied power of attorney granted to the state at birth. Correcting one's political status is the primary mechanism for exiting the Roman slave status of the public system. This phase constructs the identity layer of the tripartite model: identity, status, and standing. Reclamation ensures the strategist is no longer viewed as a corporate entity or a public office, but as a living entity, the executive over their own estate. Administrative requirements for status correction. Reclaiming identity requires the filing of specific legal instruments to rescind previous presumptions of government guardianship and agency. The affidavit process. Execute a non-taxpayer affidavit, a durable power of attorney general in fact, and a revocation of all previous powers of attorney. These documents rescind the signatures and charities previously granted to public corporations. Nationality declaration. Formally declare status as a state national. This renders the entity a foreign national to the federal corporation under 28 U.S.C. 3002-15a. To bolster this, the strategist may utilize international identification such as the Moroccan ID or the Palau digital residency, establishing an international traveler status. Fiduciary appointment. File IRS Form 56 or 56F for financial institutions to appoint the Secretary of the Treasury as the fiduciary. This forces the public system to recognize your standing as the principal of the estate. Administrative notice. Formal notice must be served via certified mail to the Secretary of State, the Department of Treasury, the IRS, specifically the CI Division, and the Vatican, which serves as the foundational jurisdiction for these trust structures. Once reclaimed, the identity must be housed in a protected structure, transitioning the sole proprietorship of the strawman into a private holding vehicle. Phase 2. Asset protection architecture. Establishing a robust jurisdictional shell is essential for insulating reclaimed assets. The strategist must utilize charging order protection states, specifically Nevada or Wyoming, to create an arm's length distance from the public persona and minimize liability. Corporate and trust vehicles. The holding company. Establish a manager-managed LLC in a protection state to act as a secured creditor over personal assets. The holding company must file a UCC-1 financing statement against the all-caps name, the debtor. This perfects a security interest in the assets, placing the holding company first in line for any claims and shielding the equity from public levies. The irrevocable trust. The non-grantor irrevocable complex discretionary spendthrift trust, say that 5 times fast, is the ultimate vehicle for autonomy. By structuring your affairs as an unincorporated association, similar to the models used by the Amish or elite private foundations, you move entirely outside the scope of statutory codes. This structure complies with IRS Code 643B. Crucially, for income to be tax neutral, the fiduciary must allocate extraordinary dividends or passive income to the corpus of the trust. This removes the assets from the personal taxable jurisdiction of the individual. Under IRS Code 643B, this vehicle provides unparalleled advantages. Elimination of capital gains. By reclassifying income as extraordinary dividends or corpus, the trust avoids the tax obligations that plague public personas. Asset protection. It is 100% lawsuit-proof, because you own nothing but control everything. There is no personal property for creditors to seize. The private legacy. Assets are managed by the trust and handed down privately, bypassing the unlawful reach of the probate courts. Anonymity tactics. Maintain privacy by utilizing registered agents and resigning managers. An initial manager establishes the entity and then immediately resigns, appointing the true controller as the new manager via private documents. This allows for banking and commerce without the controller's name appearing on public registries. Phase 3. Financial Finesse and Treasury Direct Account, TDA, access. The Treasury Direct Account is a technical reality backed by 18 U.S.C. 8, which defines the obligation of the United States to include all bonds, certificates of indebtedness, and Federal Reserve notes. As the private investor, whose labor backs the national debt, you have a stake in the securities bundled under your Social Security number. The Treasury Direct Account functions as a closed circuit for credit. All debt in the public system is technically prepaid via the pledge of the individual's labor and the birth certificate. The TDA is the mechanism to access this credit for the settlement of public obligations. Establishing and utilizing the TDA. Account establishment. Establish the TDA, but avoid linking it to a personal public bank account, which commingles jurisdictions. Instead, connect it to a trust account or a brokerage account, e.g. Fidelity. Moving securities from the public treasury into a liquid, usable format requires a brokerage bridge. Platforms like Fidelity or Robinhood act as the essential intermediaries. However, a master strategist knows that these accounts must never be opened in a personal capacity. To remain in the private sector, the brokerage account must be opened in the name of your trust or LLC. Security identification. Conduct a securitization audit to identify the specific bonds and bundled securities tied to the Social Security number. The CUSIP numbers are the vital keys required to identify and claim the assets/bonds tied to the original issue. The medallion stamp requirement. Any transfer of securities or TDA-linked assets requires a medallion signature guarantee stamp from a bank like Chase or Bank of America. This is the only authorized method to transfer these specific securities from the public to the private. Liquidation path. Credit flows from the Treasury to the private brokerage account, where it is transformed into liquid assets for the holding company to reinvest in the private estate. Phase 4. Administrative maintenance. The strategy concludes by shifting from illegal tax evasion to legal tax avoidance. The goal is to establish a tax-free position for generational wealth by operating the individual's life as a business. The bookkeeping workflow. To maintain commercial honor, the strategist must follow a strict administrative checklist. Form 8281. File this form as a crucial prerequisite to notice. It informs the IRS of the establishment of the entity and the original issue discount. 1099 OID logic. Report credit as income using the 1099 OID. The logic is that Federal Reserve notes are gambling proceeds. Speculation on a future promise to pay that may never occur. The 1099 OID functions as an expense report to be reimbursed for the labor/energy that the public corporation was obligated to pay for under HJR 192. A common pitfall is the attempt to discharge debt, which the state often labels as a frivolous filing. True power lies in settling the account through proper bookkeeping. Under HJR 192, all debt is technically prepaid because there is no lawful money in circulation. Therefore, when you receive a bill, the absence of a check or money order accompanying that bill is an admission of a federal withholding. Filing sequence. Enter information from Box 1 of Form 1096 onto line 21 of the 1040. Use the 1040V payment voucher to settle public debts via the prepaid side of the ledger. The W-4 sandwich. Execute this method to manage withholdings at the source. This is a reclamation of energy, ensuring the entity does not gift its labor to the corporation. To settle the account, you must utilize the 1099 OID and W-4 sandwich method. This provides the IRS, the bookkeeper, for your credit, with the proper accounting to zero the ledger. The most critical component practitioners often miss is Form 8281. This form is the missing link used to notify the IRS of the identity of the issuer, ensuring the credit returns to the source rather than being claimed as abandoned property by the bank. Business as a lifestyle. The private entity operates as a business where personal expenses are reclassified. Lodging, meals, education, and even wardrobe/fringe benefits become legitimate deductible stipends or benefits for the fellows or officers of the trust. The 5 pillars of the private national. Identity reclamation. Consistent assertion of foreign national and international traveler status. Secured creditor status. Perfecting liens via UCC1 and holding assets through a protected holding company. CUSIP/security identification. Utilizing audits to identify and redeem the prepaid credit in the closed circuit. Administrative bookkeeping. Precise filing of Forms 8281, 1099 OID, 1096, and 1040B. Jurisdictional autonomy. Maintaining all affairs within the private 643B trust architecture, away from public statutes. The journey from a public persona to private power is a shift in consciousness and administration. Prosperity is your divine birthright, but the matrix only functions through your voluntary submission and the gifting over of your estate via the Social Security number. It is time to stop being a tax delinquent fugitive and start acting as the administrator of your own wealth.